I'm Gavin Turner, and I'm 32 years old. If you had asked me years ago what I wanted out of life, it wouldn't have been this. I once pursued the music that used to make me feel like fireflies, but now I stand on a life constructed on someone else's blueprint fantasies. To flow from me, illuminating my veins and providing purpose to my protracted restless evenings that were hidden beneath mountains of... I didn't grow up seeing myself in a glass tower, crunching figures and selling my money on quarterly reports and bank statements. Hours to customers who, as soon as they received what they desired, would forget my name. I grew up fantasizing of phases of... I lost myself in the chords as I watched audiences moving beneath the faint haze of stage lights. With guitars slung over my shoulder, I dreamed of living a life that felt alive, but the confusion of actual life claimed that it was based on stability, income, and plans that Clarissa used to look at, not on guitars and late nights. I believe in your passion, Gavin. Look at me, with those wild, dazzling eyes. When we were younger, promises felt like freedom and tasted like candy. But once the rings were exchanged and the marriage certificate's ink dried, the melody changed. At first, it was a slight scowl when I mentioned a tight smile on an open mic night when I was playing my guitar for too long in the nights, and then came, standing by the window of our small apartment, she once said, "We're not kids anymore," with her arms folded, her silhouette against the lowering light. We have obligations. For a dreamer like me, the word responsibilities is so heavy. Yet I wanted her, I wanted us, and I wanted to be the man who could provide her the life she deserved. So I exchanged my strings for spreadsheets and hid the crazily disorganized sections of... I didn't fit in well with her world of well-planned brunches, holiday gatherings, and 5-year financial plans. I believed that if I put up enough effort, smiled broadly enough, and earned enough money, I could buy my way into the... I believed that love was about making sacrifices, but I was unaware that I was the only one giving up Clarissa's future. Family members, Dolores, Richard, and Mallory, greeted me with smiles that stretched like the way a museum would greet a stray kitten. They applauded my suits rather than my spirit, and their thin voices were so lovely and polite that they made my teeth hurt. Promotions rather than my tenacity. I was an accessory box rather than a son-in-law. Completed another task in their painstakingly planned lives, but I held on to faith that if I maintained, they would truly see me and possibly even fall in love with me if I continued to show up and smooth out the rough edges of who I was, or at least show me respect. But it became harder to deny the fact that Clarissa wasn't holding my hand on the trip any longer. Instead, she was dragging me along behind her like an obstinate piece of luggage that was only useful. She always talked to me a little sharper when her mother was around, which was a reflection of the weight I bore. Dolores and Richard used to laugh whenever I mentioned something that didn't suit their ideal story. Was in the manner that Mallory hardly gave me a glance, as if acknowledging my existence were a duty, yet I persisted. Because love persists, forgives, and believes that's what it does. What I told myself, nevertheless, and I recall standing by the front as they abandoned me without a second thought. Window, the early sun glinting off the polished chrome, Clarissa as their black SUVs pulled out of the driveway. The front seat, Dolores adjusting her sunglasses, Richard barking, and her laughter resonating softly through the closed glass. Mallory is looking through a gorgeous trip magazine with her blonde hair glistening like a halo as she keys instructions into his phone. None of them turned to face me as they gazed back at the home. I was merely the background noise, the secure, reliable stand-in that was supposed to... Their world together as they search for Hawaii sunsets, and Sophie left behind what she described as a piece of furniture. Too heavy to carry, Clarissa had given me a frigid, piercing kiss on my cheek. He stated, "You're good at these things, so you don't mind staying with her for a week." Things, as if I were the hired assistant, and it was my responsibility to stay behind with a shattered girl who didn't need a... On vacation, the house sank into a cavernous hole, and the tail lights vanished without even saying thank you. I placed my forehead against the cool glass and breathed slowly in stillness. It was humorous but sickly, so all my gives up all the hours I've spent slaving away to fit into their gleaming idealized vision, and when the time came to chase delight to enjoy the life I contributed to, but they abandoned me without thinking twice since I wasn't a partner. A tool. I averted my gaze from the window, and the pain inside of me was intense and raw. Clarissa's. My chest tightened as the pricey floral aroma of the perfume continued to cling to the air, but I forced it away, for the first time in a long time. I let the thought of perhaps making a mistake seep in. Perhaps the life I created wasn't really mine, and perhaps it was too late to reverse the fact that Clarissa's family wasn't what I had previously thought a family should be. Instead, they were a high gates, stone fortress walls, and a moat full of mute judgments. Always grinning, Dolores, the matriarch, governed it with a gentle iron fist. She cut you down, Richard, nicely, and her husband wasn't much better than... Mallory, Clarissa's younger sister, evaluated people based on the quality of their outfits and the amount of their bank accounts, reflected their coldness, even if she wore hers like a stylish, carefree, and completely heartless designer jacket. Then there was Sophie, Mallory's daughter, who was just 14 years old and hardly talked. Her world shrank to the four corners of a large home while she was confined to a bed in the East Wing. Dimly lighted chamber, they claimed that she had developed a mystery, unknown illness that left her weak and... At her charity lunches, bedridden, Dolores talked about her as if she were telling a heartbreaking tale that she kept up to date for sympathy. Mallory smiled and posed with Sophie in holiday pictures that were skillfully set up to conceal the girl's pallid skin and the vacant look into her eyes. Richard referred to her as the poor thing whenever he spoke about her, as if she were some far away. She was the only genuine person in that chilly, empty house, which was an annoyance to me. I would frequently sit by her bedside as Clarissa and the others occupied themselves with garden parties and fundraisers. Converse with her on everyday topics like the weather, music I used to play, and amusing news stories I watched. But she hardly ever replied by simply blinking those tired, wide eyes at the ceiling, although occasionally I noticed a brief indication that anything was wrong when she twitched and flickered at the corner of her mouth. Dolores never liked me spending too much time with Sophie. Without the fragile mask, Sophie was still there. Trained for that type of care, she would sniff, as if talking were a terrible narcotic, something Richard